Welcome to the deep dive.
This is where we take the sources you send us, articles, notes, personal documents, and really just pull them apart to find the core story.
And we give you that essential shortcut to being well informed. Today's deep dive is it's a really unusual one. We're looking at a set of fragmented, intensely personal documents.
Yeah.
They detail the complete meltdown behind the perfect facade of a place called Caseham High.
And these documents, they're about the lives of two teachers, Eve and Nate Bennett, and one of their students, Addie Saverson, and all their lives are just deeply, toxically interwoven.
Mm-hmm.
So our job today is to trace this path of escalating conflict. It starts with marital problems or professional misconduct, and it goes all the way to, well, to violence.
This isn't just some local school scandal. It's a look into how people deceive themselves and the catastrophic price of avoiding your own emotions.
Absolutely. The stability of the Bennett's life was it was paper thin, and these sources show how fast everything can just boil over.
And the central irony, the detail that just grabs you from the very first page is all about them. Nate is this handsome, popular English teacher.
The cool teacher.
Exactly. And Eve is his wife, a math teacher. They live in what she calls the house of my dreams.
But on the very first day of the school year, they're driving to work in their own.
Uh-huh.
Honda Nate is always the one driving, of course, and Eve is just sitting there thinking.
And what she's thinking is, it's just chilling.
She's fantasizing. She says, and this is a quote, "I hope a truck blows through a stop sign, plows into the Honda, and kills us both instantly."
Wow.
Yeah.
That one thought, that wish for just, shared annihilation, it tells you everything you need to know about their marriage before we even get into the secrets. So our deep dive begins right there, in a car, with one spouse wishing for both of them to die, while smiling and getting ready to go teach algebra. Okay, so let's start there. Let's unpack this domestic routine, or really the total lack of a real one that defines their life.
It's not a partnership.
No. It reads like a contract. A really strict legal contract that's just for show, for public consumption.
It's all built on this. I mean, you said it, this military-grade rigidity. It's designed to just minimize any conflict and make sure they look perfect on the outside.
And the documents are so specific, it's almost disturbing about their intimacy schedule.
It is. It explicitly says 3 kisses per day, sex once a month.
It's a checklist.
It's a checklist. It's not spontaneous. It's not about connection. It's about maintaining the image of a healthy, aspirational couple.
And the consequence of that, the really devastating part, is the toll it takes on Eve, especially because she wants to start a family.
Right. She notes that she went off birth control a year ago, but this scheduled robotic intimacy has resulted in, and her words are, a lot of nothing.
So the goal is to build a life, but the method they're using is basically designed to prevent any real intimacy from ever happening.
And now that rigidity, it's in every part of their life. You mentioned Nate always drives. That's not an accident. It reinforces the power structure.
He's in control.
He's in control. He's the popular, handsome face of the couple, setting the pace, setting the direction, and this directly feeds into Eve's really deep insecurities.
Her self-perception is, it's truly heartbreaking to read. She sees herself as decidedly plain.
Too skinny, all dangerously sharp angles.
She mentions her muddy brown eyes, her hair that lies limply on my scalp. She's just so aware that people see Nate as being way out of my league.
And she feels her good fortune is just based on his choice to be with her, not on her own worth.
Exactly. And that feeling of being inadequate leads directly to this need for material validation, something external.
Which brings us to the shoes.
Shoes. She's only 5'2". He's 5'10". So she tries to close that gap with these really specific, really expensive high heels.
Gimme shoes, Manolos. These aren't just fashion. They're confidence boosters. They're armor. They literally and, symbolically elevate her.
But this reliance on shopping, it gets dangerous. It snowballs from designer shoes into, well, almost criminal behavior.
Look.
We have to talk about the incident at the store. Footsies.
Oh, yes. That's a key moment. It shows just how fragile her emotional state really is.
So what happens?
Eve is she's under so much pressure from this empty marriage, her job, everything. She tries to shoplift a pair of expensive pumps, tucks them right into her purse.
This isn't just casual theft, is it? It feels like an act of desperation.
It is. It's this need to possess something beautiful, something valuable that's outside of their cold, structured routine.
And she almost gets caught.
Almost.
Yeah.
She's only saved by this, absurd stroke of luck. An elderly woman who had already paid accidentally sets off the security alarm. The clerk hadn't disarmed the tag.
And that chaos gives Eve just enough time to slip away.
And what's really vital here is her reaction. Her first thought isn't about jail or a criminal record.
It's about Nate.
It's about Nate finding out, the crushing disappointment from him that would just shatter their perfect public image.
So this near miss, it just reinforces her belief that she has to find any kind of validation or intimacy in secret.
Which creates this emotional vacuum that only one thing can fill.
The affair.
Yeah.
The affair. Let's get into Jay, because he is the absolute opposite of everything Nate represents.
So who is he?
Jay is her secret emotional lifeline. He's the antidote to the cold, structured world she lives in with Nate. He's a shoe salesman at a place called Simon's.
And he's married too, right?
He is, which is an interesting detail. Eve mentioned she can often hear a crying baby in the background when they talk on the phone. It suggests his life is messy and real, not rigidly controlled like hers.
And the place they meet is so telling.
It is the storeroom of the shoe store. It's dark, it's cramped. This is not some romantic getaway.
She even notes that one time she rolled onto a stiletto heel, almost broke her skin. It's raw, it's uncomfortable, it's dangerous.
But she says, and this is so extreme, she says, without it, she'd throw myself off the top of the school building. It's giving her the emotional release that Nate just refuses to offer.
And Nate, he is the master of avoidance, of making excuses.
Oh, absolutely. He's always starving. Or he says that sex after eating ziti hardly sounds sexy. He uses his fitness obsession, the daily trips to the basement to lift weights, as a way to stay distant.
To stay the hottest teacher at Kasem High.
Exactly. But his best tool, his most sophisticated excuse, is his writing.
Right. His writing inspiration is the perfect alibi for staying away from Eve. It makes him seem like this sensitive artist, tragically misunderstood by his wife who only cares about logic and reasoning.
When in reality, it's just a convenient lie. The sources are crystal clear on this. This is a marriage held together by a shared address and a public image, and it's completely hollowed out by secrets and emotional starvation.
So that environment, that really devastating emptiness inside the Bennett marriage, it sets the stage perfectly for the next person in this story.
Addie Severson.
The student. She's introduced as the isolate, the scapegoat of Kasem High, and she describes her life at school as a whole lot of pointless.
And that's because her freshman year just fundamentally destabilized her entire world.
A lot of that is rooted in the scandal surrounding Art Tuttle.
Right, Art Tuttle. He was this beloved math teacher, a Santa lookalike, even a mentor to Eve herself. And he was forced to resign after some parents complained about his relationship with Addie.
And the sources are so clear here. Tuttle was, at worst, guilty of caring too much.
That's all it was. He was providing genuine support. He was tutoring her for free for hours, giving her rides home in bad weather because her home life was so difficult.
But the optics. A 15-year-old girl leaving a teacher's house late at night. That's all it took to ignite a scandal, no matter how innocent it was.
And the school, of course, fearing lawsuits, controversy, they sacrificed him.
He was lucky to find any work in New England after that.
So the result of that incident is twofold. It destroys a good, caring teacher, and it brands Addie. She becomes this troubled girl, an obvious target for a predatory teacher.
Which makes her so vulnerable to the next adult who shows her any kindness.
Exactly. But the shadow that Addie is living under is actually much darker and much more complicated than the Tuttle scandal.
We have to talk about what happened with her father.
Yeah. She describes him as an abusive alcoholic who would hit her mother. And Addie. Addie was directly responsible for his death, a secret she has buried deep down.
What? What actually happened?
The incident happened one night during a confrontation. Addie was studying with her best friend, Hudson. They had the door closed.
A small act of privacy.
An act of privacy that infuriated her drunk father. He started yelling, he shoved Hudson, and Addie, trying to defend her friend, shoved her father back.
And he fell down the stairs.
He went tumbling down. His neck twisted at what she says was an unnatural angle, an immense irreversible trauma.
And Hudson, her best friend, he completely freaked out.
He was convinced they'd just committed homicide. But Addie, with this chilling presence of mind that was probably born from years of that chaos.
She convinced him they had to cover it up.
Immediately. They dragged him out the back door, locked themselves in his room. And because her father had such a high blood alcohol level, the death was ruled an accidental fall.
And her rationalization for this is, it's really telling about her state of mind.
She says the death fixed everything at home.
Wow.
Yeah. She basically exchanged one kind of trauma, the daily fear of abuse, for another, this immense silent weight of hidden homicide.
It shows this deep dysfunction where, I guess, violence is seen as a way to create stability.
But the immediate cost of keeping that secret is she loses her one real support system. She loses Hudson.
He avoids her for 6 months. He can't handle the shared secret. He just looks down at his dirty sneakers whenever they make eye contact.
Right. He transitions away from her, becomes one of the popular kids. He starts dating Kenzie Montgomery.
Leaving Addie completely alone with this huge, deadly secret.
And the isolation just gets worse because of this relentless bullying led by Kenzie and her friends. The sources give these visceral examples. The constant staring and whispering.
And then there's the physical stuff, like Kenzie filling her locker with the shaving cream, forcing Addie to clean it up while everyone mocks her.
And that is the exact moment Nate Bennett finds her. She's desperate for any kind of positive adult connection. She feels abandoned by her friends. She feels betrayed by what happened with Mr. Tuttle. Her only sanctuary becomes Nate's English class.
She starts writing poetry, something she never thought she could do. She called herself a mediocre student.
And Nate's focused attention. It becomes her entire world. It just leaves her uniquely, perfectly vulnerable to his manipulation.
And that vulnerability is the exact entry point that he, Mr. Nathaniel Bennett, just ruthlessly exploits.
Oh, completely. The dynamics that unfold in his classroom and later in the dark room, they are not accidental at all. It's a calculated grooming pattern.
He immediately singles her out. He starts calling her his soulmate, his favorite student.
He uses these big romantic terms to make their relationship feel like more than just student and teacher. He frames it as this, deep cosmic connection so that Addie believes it's something profound.
Not something illicit or predatory.
Exactly. And he immediately starts poisoning her view of Eve, which is easy because Addie already dislikes her math teacher.
He paints Eve as the villain in his life, the emotional roadblock.
He tells Addie that Eve isn't a dreamer, that she only cares about logic and reasoning. Meanwhile, he and Addie, they share this sensitive artistic connection because they're both poets.
He's just projecting all his own frustrations onto his wife, making Addie feel like she's the missing piece of his, his authentic self.
And the documents show that Nate is hyper-aware of the risk, especially after what happened to Tuttle.
He insists on total secrecy.
Total secrecy. He demands they use Snap Flash for all communication, an app where messages and photos vanish after just a few seconds.
And he uses the Tuttle scandal against her.
He does. He tells her they can never be found out because he can't afford the fallout that Tuttle faced, which, places the entire burden of secrecy on Addie. It makes her responsible for his career.
The relationship escalates really quickly. It goes from illicit kisses in the classroom,
which was Addie's first kiss, by the way, showing just how inexperienced she is,
to the dark room, which feels safer to them. And he's just showering her with flattery, telling her she's the most beautiful girl he's ever met, reinforcing that soulmate story.
And he gives her this whole line about how he only married Eve because it was expected of me to settle down.
He's weaponizing the soulmate idea to keep her silent and compliant. He's always telling her, my entire career is in your hands. I'm counting on you.
It's classic manipulation.
Yeah.
He's making the victim responsible for the perpetrator's fate. It makes the secret feel like this shared, high-stakes mission.
And we get immediate proof that his career is the only thing he actually cares about.
Yeah.
Not Addie's confidence, not her emotional development. And this is all revealed through the lie about the poetry contest.
So Nate tells Addie he's submitted her poem to this big statewide Massachusetts poetry contest, and her confidence just soars.
But when the results come out, the winner isn't her. It's another student, Lotus, the editor of the school magazine. Addie is just crushed.
And when she confronts him, he just doubles down on the lie. He gives her this incredibly manipulative answer.
What does he say?
He claims he was scared that the second I said your name to the principal, she would see through me and know how deeply I cared for you. He turns his own cowardice into this grand declaration of love.
But the truth comes out.
The truth always comes out. Lotus, the winner, tells Addie that Nate approached her and said he decided to go with her poem instead, offering some vague criticism of Addie's.
It just confirms his deception. He used the promise of fame and validation to keep her on the hook, but the second there was any actual risk to him, he threw her under the bus.
Sacrificed her confidence without a second thought.
And while all this is happening, the conflict between Eve and Addie is running on a parallel track.
Right. Eve, Mrs. Bennett, openly dislikes Addie. She describes her as always scowling, never prepared for math class.
And her suspicion really comes to a head when she catches Addie cheating on a midterm.
And Eve is ready to report her. She's ready to go to the principal, which would have had serious consequences for Addie, maybe even expulsion.
But Nate steps in.
And he weaponizes Addie's trauma against his own wife. He tells Eve that Addie had a hard time that year, a vague but effective reference to the Tuttle scandal and her home life.
And he convinces Eve to show some kindness.
Which she does. She gives Addie a 0, but agrees not to report her. And this act of kindness that Nate arranged just makes Eve even more frustrated. It cements this feeling that Addie is targeting her marriage and getting away with it.
And then the conflict escalates physically. Addie, who is now obsessed with Nate's home life, goes to their house.
Unannounced, she hides in the bushes just to watch him. And Eve spots her.
This leads to a tense meeting with the principal, Mrs. Higgins.
And Nate immediately texts Addie with a very clear instruction: deny everything.
And Addie, who has experience with covering up big secrets, does exactly that. She lies, says she was home with her mom, and her mom covers for her.
So Eve leaves that meeting totally frustrated, convinced Addie's a liar and a threat to Nate, just like people thought she was a threat to Mr. Tuttle.
And this is where the whole story just pivots dramatically.
Yeah.
Addie is still reeling from the principal's meeting, from the poetry contest betrayal, and then she's confronted by Kenzie Montgomery,
her former bully, her best friend's girlfriend.
And Kenzie delivers the final piece of the puzzle that just shatters Nate's facade completely.
Kenzie approaches Addie because Nate has just broken things off with Kenzie, claiming there's too much scrutiny.
So Kenzie reveals that Nate had been involved with her since she was 14.
14. A fact that, if proven, means Nate isn't just facing professional ruin, he's facing sex offender charges.
And she has proof.
She has the proof. She saved the snap flash screenshots of Nate calling her his soulmate.
Oh, wow. That's the moment of realization.
That's the devastating moment. Nate's cosmic connection was just a cheap, reusable lie, a tactic he used to groom any vulnerable student who needed validation.
And suddenly, Addie and Kenzie, the victim and the bully,
they're on the same side, united by Nate's deception. They're not rivals anymore. They're just fellow victims, abandoned by the exact same man.
So the storm finally breaks inside the Bennett marriage when Eve finds out for herself.
Right. She finds Nate and Addie kissing in his classroom, and she takes a photo with her phone. Irrefutable proof.
So now she's armed. What does she do?
She spends the next 3 hours at home, drinking vodka and wine, just building up her psychological armor. And when Nate finally gets home late, she delivers the ultimatum.
And it is precise and uncompromising.
The conditions are absolute. An immediate divorce. The house is hers. And Nate must resign from teaching children forever.
Or she goes to the principal with the photo.
Exactly. And Nate is just stunned. He realizes she holds all the cards, and he caves instantly. He just starts throwing clothes into a duffel bag. The perfect life he built is just collapsing in minutes.
And this collapse is what triggers Addie's final, desperate move.
Nate replies to Addie's snap flash, tells her Eve knows everything and has kicked him out. And Addie becomes hysterical. She still sees Nate as her true love, her only escape.
So she decides she has to go to the Bennett house.
To reason with Eve. But you can see this idea forming in her mind, probably subconsciously, that if Eve were just gone, she and Nate could still be together.
So she gets to the house, finds Eve alone, and Eve is just brutally honest with her.
She tells Addie that Nate is lying to her, that he's manipulating her, that she is just the next girl in a very long line of victims.
And that reality check, it just pushes Addie over the edge. It echoes that violence that fixed everything with her father.
She grabs the first thing she sees, a frying pan from the kitchen counter.
And she hits Eve with it 3 times.
She's convinced she's killed her, terrified. She's reliving her father's death. And in a total panic, she uses Eve's phone to call Nate.
And just gasps, I don't think she's breathing.
Nate rushes home, sees Eve in a pool of blood, and immediately demands to know what Addie did.
And this is the pivot. The really chilling twist that turns this from a desperate act of violence into a cold, calculated murder.
Because Nate, whose greatest fear, the sources tell us this, is the abyss of death, of being forgotten. He discovers that Eve is actually still alive.
She's alive.
She's alive. And he realizes, in that second, the gravity of the situation. If Eve survives, she'll confirm everything. The affair, Addie's attack, it will ruin him completely.
So to protect his career, his image, he makes a choice.
He strangles Eve to death with his bare hands.
And the source material has this horrific detail about that moment.
It does. As he was choking her, he noted the look of terror in her eyes. He said she looked like she was standing by the abyss, terrified of dropping in.
He's projecting his own deepest fear onto her in her final moments.
He's making sure she experiences the very fate he dreads. It's an act of pure self-preservation.
The cover-up is, it's just chaotic, it's hurried, amateurish.
Completely. Nate takes Eve's car, her Kia, to the commuter rail station to stage a disappearance. He claims she was going to New Jersey to see her parents.
They'd bought Amtrak tickets to solidify the alibi, but the tickets were never scanned, a huge hole in the story.
Then they drive to a muddy pumpkin patch to bury the body. And the grave they dig is incredibly shallow, like less than 2 feet deep.
And Nate, ever the image-conscious coward, he's the one who carries the body.
Right. And it's during this frantic, horrifying process that Addie notices something crucial.
What does she see?
She sees these suspicious red marks on Eve's neck that look exactly like fingers.
And she realizes.
It's a silent accusation that Nate didn't just cover up her attack. He murdered his own wife.
And her questioning him, it threatens his control, and it leads to his final, definitive act of betrayal against his supposed soulmate.
He immediately, aggressively, shifts all the blame to her. He yells, "Stop being ridiculous, Addie. You know I didn't kill her. You did."
And then he leaves her.
He leaves her at 3 in the morning in the woods with a body and 2 shovels.
Yeah.
He deletes his Snap Flash account, cutting off all ties. She's gone from soulmate to disposable pawn in just a few hours.
And Addie, realizing her soulmate has just left her literally holding the shovel, she has only one person left to call.
Hudson.
Despite 6 months of silence, Hudson drives almost an hour in the middle of the night to get her.
Cementing his genuine loyalty. The kind of supportive connection Nate could never, ever provide.
So let's talk about the immediate aftermath, the investigation. It's led by a Detective Spur.
Right. Described as petite, but with this exceptional focus and professionalism. And she is immediately suspicious of Nate's story.
This flimsy story about Eve's sudden trip to New Jersey.
Nate tries to play the part of the distraught husband, but he's overdoing it. He's too disheveled. Sprague's questions are subtle, but very targeted.
She notes he never mentioned that Addie was one of his students, which makes his defensiveness about Eve's conflict with her seem suspicious.
Yeah, and she asks him point blank about extramarital affairs. He denies it way too quickly. He's clearly ratted.
Yeah. So Sprague is focused on the gaps in the story, the unscanned Amtrak tickets, the lack of communication from Eve.
But the real psychological pressure on Nate doesn't come from the police. It comes from something left in his own kitchen.
The shoes.
The shoes? Eve's expensive high heels, the ones she needed for confidence, the ones that symbolize her secret life. He finds them in his kitchen, caked with pumpkin residue.
He even finds a bird pecking at them. It's this really unsettling image of decay and exposure.
The shoes symbolize everything he thought he had buried. Eve's secrets, his betrayal, the crime scene itself. He immediately just descends into paranoia.
He's wondering who left them there. Was it Addie trying to get revenge? Was it Eve's secret lover, Jay?
Or was it, and he actually thinks this, the literal ghost of his dead wife?
So he washes the shoes, tries to erase the evidence, but the psychological warfare has already started. Someone knows just enough to manipulate him, and he's terrified.
But the real stunning retribution, the part no one sees coming, hinges on the major twists of this whole story.
Eve Bennett survived.
Eve Bennett survived. Yeah. The frying pan, the strangulation, it left her incapacitated. But she wasn't dead. She was wrapped in a sheet, covered by just a thin layer of dirt and leaves.
And the sheer terror, combined with how shallow the grave was, allowed her to claw her way out.
She literally clawed her way free, break through the surface, gasping for air, her hands mercifully unbound.
And in this moment, Eve, the character who saw herself as plain and fragile and dependent on shoes for confidence, she finds her own strength.
Her own will to live. And her first call is not to the police.
It's to Jay, her emotional lifeline.
And Jay proves his loyalty instantly. He shows up in the middle of the night, no questions asked, sees her covered in mud, wrapped in a sheet, and just helps her.
He gets her these ugly black snow boots from his store, the total opposite of her vanity purchases. He just sits with her. He's that true supportive connection that Nate pretended to be.
And together, they orchestrate the final, perfectly calculated act of revenge.
They go back to the pumpkin patch, and they find Nate there, checking on the grave, making sure his crime is still a secret.
And this is Eve's moment, her final devastating moment of clarity and agency. She ties Nate up with duct tape,
forces him into the shallow, muddy grave she just escaped from,
and begins burying him alive.
Yeah.
With the shovel. And she tells him exactly why she's doing it, because he tried to kill her.
She weaponizes his deepest, most private fear against him. Nate, terrified of the abyss, is just sobbing and begging. He's left to face that solitary terror of the grave, the very fate he put her through.
The plain wife, the math teacher, she delivered a personalized horror rooted in the intimate knowledge of his own soul.
So in the end, what happens to the survivors?
Eve leaves town. She refuses to confirm her own murder and burial story to the police, which means Nate's disappearance is still unsolved.
Which is its own kind of justice. He's trapped in limbo, not given the closure of a trial.
Exactly. She abandoned her old life, but she gained her freedom.
And Addie. She was brutally betrayed, but she does find a path forward.
She and Kenzie Montgomery, they find this solidarity. They go to the police together and reveal Nate's long history of predatory behavior, especially with Kenzie.
And that action, even if Nate's body is never found, it prevents him from harming anyone else. And it sets them both on a path to recovery.
And Addie finds that genuine connection with Hudson, who, in a strange twist of fate, now works part-time at Simon's Shoes.
No way.
And his friends call him Jay.
That is a strange kismet.
It is. And Addie realizes that the intense, manipulative passion of Nate's soulmate stuff is meaningless compared to the quiet, supportive loyalty Hudson offers her.
She starts to question the whole idea of a soulmate, realizing stability is more valuable than that toxic intensity.
Right.
So this whole deep dive, it just exposed the immense cost of emotional avoidance, of predation, of living for a public image.
And the most underestimated character, the plain wife, obsessed with expensive shoes, she's the one who executed the most calculated and terrifying revenge imaginable.
It's fascinating. Nate's entire life was spent trying to avoid the abyss, the exposure, the ruin, death itself. But the mechanism of his destruction was Eve's knowledge of that private fear.
She used the psychological tools she learned over years of intimacy with him to deliver a horror that was perfectly uniquely tailored to him.
Which I think raises a pretty important question for you, the listener. Considering your own deepest, most private fears, the ones you rarely even say out loud, who in your life, if they truly wanted to harm you, possesses the psychological tools to weaponize that intimate knowledge against you?
Something to think about.